You are listening to the Julie Parker Practice Success podcast, where you discover management insights and strategies for your successful dental practice. There are also interviews with key people in the industry who have advice and services to help you and your team achieve great success. Welcome to this week's episode of the Julie Parker Practice Success podcast. And I'm thrilled to be able to be joined by my guest, Dr. Linda Wilson, today. And I'm sure everyone out there is going to be really intrigued by the insights that Linda's going to deliver to us in this time of life where we've all moved through something quite common together. And what we also have moved through quite commonly together, but on our own different directions, is how it has affected how we look at our life, what we plan for our life, and what we feel the meaning to our life is all about. Now, Linda, just to tell you a bit about her, she is an energy psychology practitioner. She's also a doctor of traditional medicine. She has a graduate diploma in education. And she has been involved in many, many things. She's a corporate speaker. She works with clients on a daily basis. And I'm really intrigued to discover what, Linda, you have been speaking to your clients about now that we've gone 2 years. We've got 2 years of COVID under our belt. Everyone talks about this the post-pandemic situation. I don't think there's anything post about it. I think it's still pretty current to us. Welcome, Linda. How are you?
Thank you. I am great. Thank you very much. And yes, the conversations that I've been having with my clients are actually make my work so much more heartfelt. The conversations are providing me with an opportunity to really reassess where I'm at as well, which is, in the work as coaches, we often come across, information or perspectives or ideas that actually really challenge us and help us to grow. So the conversations that I'm having are really about those, I guess, higher level or a greater perspective, or taking a step back from our life and doing a big reassess. And those conversations are very beautiful because, Julie, what's happening is people are really asking the question, what is important in my life? Who am I now after this situation that we've had? I think it's given us an incredibly different perspective on how we should look at our life, or how we might look at our life, and perhaps how other people are also looking at their life, because, we've had extremes of polarity, and that can often be very challenging for people. But again, it gives us an opportunity to really learn about ourselves. So the questions that I'm getting are, what's the meaning of my life? Am I actually living my life on purpose? Am I living from a place of passion? Am I coming from my heart? Am I connecting with people in the way that I want to? Am I taking care of my body the way that I want to? And it leads beautifully into what it is, I guess, that you and I are going to focus on today, which is Blue Zones and this amazing thing called Ikigai.
I'm excited by this. You've mentioned the Blue Zones. I have no idea what it is, so I'm excited about it. And before we jump into that, while you were just explaining that to me, within Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where we need to have our most basic needs met before we can even look to progress to upper, more self-actualization needs, I wonder where COVID has hit us in that space and the government's management of COVID, because one of the biggest things that has really shaken us to our core, so our more basic needs, is our security of job, security of income, security of health. And because the minute security of job or income gets attacked, all of a sudden our security of home, possessions, that also becomes attacked as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, particularly during that 2-year period, everyone was very sensitive to that insecurity and that unknown, and that what's going to happen next, and that here we go again, and I thought it was over and it's not. And that constant barrage onto our psychological and emotional well-being, it was truly exhausting. And, you know, the very sad thing about this is that there are many, many, many people in all of our communities who are still in that place, because what they're experiencing is the loss of a job or the loss of a loved one, or deep impact on their financial security for many other reasons. And so I don't think we can say in any way that those experiences are over for many, many, many people in our community. And it's really worth holding that in mind when we talk about some of these sort of bigger questions, because sometimes these bigger questions can only be approached when we're out of that survival mode. And, you know, I'm lucky to be having those conversations. I also have other clients who are definitely not there yet. So, you know, there's a very wide, I guess, you know, one end of the spectrum to the other, definitely still out there in our communities.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we all love to be in control of our worlds and the things that are going on around us. And I think it surprised us all how little control we did have over our daily operations.
Yeah, and I think that this is part of, you know, this massive lag of feeling insecure and fearful and worried, and rightly so. You know, it's still being pumped out there, this fear and what we should be frightened of and how we should be responding and reacting and what we should be doing with our health. It's still very much shoved in our face every single day. And so you can imagine why for many, many people, just this basic survival level is still where they're needing to function from.
Absolutely. And I often, you know, reflect back when I'm trying to get a grasp or an understanding of a particular situation and why people react in the way they do. I often reflect back and think, oh, imagine this group of adults being little children instead. And, you know, little children just respond from their subconscious like we all do, but it's more acceptable when a child does. And it seems more obvious to us the environment that we need to create, and that we do need to create a particular environment if we want that child to feel or behave in a certain way. And if you can imagine having a child or a group of children being raised in a family that all of the security was out the window, there was lack of control, lack of direction, nothing was stable, the boundaries were all over the shop, how do you think those children would react? And I think the adults have exhibited much the same kind of tendencies.
Absolutely. I think we have given ourselves a lot of latitude to have poor behaviour. There's no doubt about it. And we've seen some recent examples of that in the media lately. I think that, you know, Create Consciousness is my trading name for my business, and it's very deliberate. Consciousness and our access to it is our way out of being snowballed by external events. And that return to, you know, whatever it is for you that represents consciousness, maybe that quiet place within you, maybe some of those practices that help us just to ground ourselves, whatever it happens to be for you, that needs to be our priority. And certainly when we talk about Ikigai, some of the questions that come in relation to that are to do with, you know, who am I and where am I in my life?
And so that consciousness, Linda, maybe that's where we can actually start to get some control back over our life again.
Yeah, I think so. Because what it does is it actually brings us back to the here and now and in this moment, which is the only place that we actually have any control. So, you know, we can plan for the future and we can, I guess, unravel the past. But none of that really gives us power in those moments in some ways. But where we are right here, right now, is where we make all our choices and decisions. And it's the only place when we can truly be present with ourselves 100%. And so that's why, you know, creating structures around you and frameworks around you that continue to bring you back to what allows you to be conscious right here and right now is so powerful. And the thing that I love about Ikigai is that it actually gives you a framework to continue to come back to when external events or internal events, e.g. our emotions and feelings, take over from us actually being able to be fully present and within our body.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, let's jump into it.
Yeah, okay. So let me tell you a little bit about the blue zones first, because they kind of lead in beautifully to each other. So the Blue Zones were it's a book, it's a recipe book, it's a way of life, it's an exploration of the planet. And basically what it is it's discussed in a book by Dan Buettner. And basically, I think there's now 7 places in the world, but at that time, I think there was 5 places in the world. And Dan Buettner was really interested in places where people live to have an extended lifestyle. But not only did they have an extended lifestyle, they were also very fit and well to the end of their life. And, there's a big difference. In the West, we can live to a ripe old age, but our health is under enormous pressure during, a lot of those final years. Whereas in these places, people were living to ripe old age, over 100 in many of these locations, but they were fit and well right up until the time that they passed away. So, the question was, well, what are these people doing that's actually different? How are they living their lives? What are they focusing on? Is it only about diet? Like, what are the things that are actually involved in these locations and these communities and these people? What are they doing that is so different? And what he discovered is that there's a couple of areas that they really build into their personal culture. So, yes, there may be cultural appreciation in the larger community, but they actually build these things into their personal culture, the framework that they build their lives around. And that included things like stuff we've heard of before, Julie: healthy diet, daily exercise, low stress that incorporates family and faith, whatever that faith or belief system might be for you. But the really big one was that those people also had purpose and meaning embedded into their lives and what they were doing in their lives, in their day-to-day. And
that's
I think
very big, isn't it?
It really is.
You were talking before about, in the Western world, we can live to a ripe old age, but it's more of an existence than a life. We're not out there doing the Shane War and, just dragging every bit of life out of every moment. We are out there just trying to live to the next day, and just not like the purpose ends up being not to die rather
exactly
than to actually live.
And that's a great distinction, not to die versus actively engaging and living your life in a joyous and purposeful way. And what does purpose give us? I mean, it gives us meaning in our life. It gives us a reason for our existence. It gives us a reason to continue the healthy diet, the exercise, to practice our faith, whatever that might be for us. So, we cannot underestimate how powerful that is in making, in enabling people to continue their life in a really healthy and joyous way. So the reason that I'm labouring that is not only because I believe it's actually the foundation and the strongest underlying sort of pin in why these people live for really long but healthy lives, but it leads beautifully into this whole conversation around Ikigai, which we can get into in a moment. But for anybody who's interested in looking at Blue Zones, you can simply Google that or use your search engine. Dan Buettner is the author of that original book. And I'll just let people know that some of the areas that were discovered, and interestingly, one of them is in Japan, which is where the word Ikigai comes from. But the places around the world that were classified as blue zones are at Okinawa in Japan, Sardinia, Loma Linda, which is in California, Costa Rica's isolated, now my pronunciation is terrible, Nicoya Peninsula, and Icaria, which is a Greek island. So they're scattered all around the planet. And, wouldn't it be an amazing trek, Julie, to be able to go to those places and experience those cultures and sit down and talk with the elders in those communities and just really, engage for ourselves in that conversation around purpose and meaning and how we can actually build that into our own lives a little bit more. I think, for those who are travel bugs, this would be a really, really fabulous and interesting way to spend some time. The other thing that I want to comment on is that one of the important things that came out of this was that many of those communities in relation to diet spend a huge proportion of what they spend on food on fruits and vegetables. And there's also a huge percentage of vegetarian and vegan eaters as well amongst these communities. So for anyone who's thinking, oh, maybe I'd like to try that, there's a little bit of a push for you to give it a go and see whether it, enables your physical health and indeed even your emotional health as well, if you want to give that a go.
I think you've just touched on a fantastic as all the borders are opening again, there's travel agents out there going, how are we going to bring people back in and get them to have confidence in expanding and going out and traveling overseas, for them to be able to formulate these travel groups and go on kind of this life journey.
So good.
Wonderful thing. And, how many times have we heard about people going to cultures that are vastly different from our own, and you come back a changed human being. And I saw a quote somewhere, I think they went into one of those, it could even have been that lovely woman who's since passed away. She was a nurse, but then she helped a lot of women who had fistula problems through giving birth, and they were rejected from their families, and she developed this hospital and helped so many women.
Incredible woman.
And she said, I think it was her or somebody in that same kind of position where they'd gone and seen some wretchedness in this world, and they said, when you witness it, you cannot walk away from it. And I think this is true too. We move through our lives in our lovely, safe little cocoon, which has become even smaller during the government response to COVID. But to remind ourselves the importance of expanding out that perspective and seeing things we don't normally see, because it all shifts and changes the way we think about our place in life, the way we think about what we should include in our life.
Perspective is everything, Julie, and the way that we change our perspective is we change our physical location, we change our emotional focus, we change what we are feeding ourselves, and by that I mean what we are exposing ourselves to, and we can shift incredibly in short spaces of time, but we have to make those conscious decisions to do that. We have to actively engage in the choices that we're making, and we have to make a decision that we're not going to perhaps allow this incredible transformational potential to just shift through our lives and then go missing, or be forgotten or not acted upon. We do have the potential to create incredible change in a very short space of time, not only for ourselves but for our communities, if we just decide that we're going to do something differently and then act on that. The decision alone is not enough. It's the action that really is going to create change. And wouldn't it be fabulous, and I'll probably say this again when I'm talking about Ikigai, wouldn't it be incredible if actually we were living our lives from a sense of purpose and meaning and enabling every other person around us to do the same thing? Can you imagine, just the disparities that are in the world at the moment, the inequalities and the injustices? If everyone was living from purpose and meaning, that stuff would be taken care of faster than you can vote out of government. Oh, sure. I think if people made the decision that they not only recognise but wholly believe and then act as though they have full autonomy in their lives, the things that could change on the planet is just, I can't even, imagine what we could do in the shortest space of time ever. And that's, I guess, what I want to challenge my clients with is it starts with us. It starts with one. And then we build that out into the way that we interact with other people in our communities. We expand our thinking and our perspective, and we allow other people to take that on or not, but we encourage them and enable them to build a perspective that is perhaps bigger than what they're currently locked in. Because I've been there, Julie, where I've thought, well, this is kind of it. It's not going to get any better than this. Or, here we go, another, locked in my house for another 6 to 8 weeks or whatever it ended up being. And here we are 2 years later.
Yeah.
And becoming so disillusioned and quite flat and, very disconcerted about that loss of control. And this is where our conversation started. But to continue to work with my clients online and continue to have those conversations with them, that's what really kept me going, because I felt as though I was a contribution. And when we're coming from purpose and meaning, we are contributing. And I think that is part of my purpose and meaning, is to, one of my highest values is communication. And with communication, I hope that I make contribution, because otherwise, what's the point of any learning in our life, right? If we don't have the capacity to pass it on, people can take it or leave it. But if we have the opportunity to pass on what we've learned, then I think for me, that's a big green tick rather on my list. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I think sometimes we in the headspace of, I'd like to make a contribution, but all these problems are too big. What could I possibly do? And what you said, it all comes back down to us, and we start with ourselves. And I think that with Shane Warne's passing and seeing so many people, his friends and family, speak about the impact he had on individuals. I mean, gosh, I had no idea he had the life that he had. I had no idea about his philanthropic efforts either, and the impact he had on little children. It's really quite extraordinary. And hearing about so many of his friends saying his children meant everything to him, and this was a very common theme as well. And so what I kind of have derived out of that is, how do I connect with the people around me that I love and cherish, but also how do I connect with people that I don't particularly love or cherish, but they are around me anyway, and how much of my life do I wake up in the morning and go, fantastic, what adventures on today? And when we are thinking about the enormity of many of the problems around us, it can dissuade us from taking any action whatsoever. But we need to start putting a lot of appropriate level meaning back into things such as connection, love, caring, justice, autonomy, all of these things, because that is where the purpose can come from. And it comes back to that very simple but beautiful analogy that, they're with the starfish, and the grandfather's taken the granddaughter down to the beach, and there's hundreds and hundreds of starfish that have beached themselves and dying. And she says, oh, no, Papa, oh, no. And she runs down, she picks up one starfish and she throws it back into the ocean again. And then she runs across and gets another one, throws it back into the ocean again. And the grandfather says to her, oh, my dear granddaughter, what are you doing? There's no way you can make a difference. Look how many starfish there are up on the beach. And she picks up the next one and she says, but it will make a difference to this one. And I think we need to bring our minds back to making a difference to this one.
Absolutely. Making a difference to one person at a time, and it starts with us. And the other thing that I love is that, we can, because we're human beings and that's the way that our brain works, we can, make our world smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller by the way that we're thinking and the feelings and emotions that we're experiencing. And one of the easiest and best ways to actually reverse that process and start to expand back out is to ask questions. And that's one of the reasons that I absolutely love Ikigai, is because it is based on questions. So do you want me to move into some of that information, Julie?
Absolutely. Let's go.
All right. So we're talking about a Japanese word, Ikigai, and Iki means life, and Gai describes value or worth. So when you put those two things together, you're basically looking at what is the value or worth of my life. And I bring that back to me. What is the value and worth of my life to me? And also, what is the value and worth of my life to my community, my family, the people around me? As you say, the people I do love, the people that maybe I don't love so much. How is it that I can work out what my value is and what my purpose is? So Ikigai starts with 4 questions. And even though it's only 4 questions, Julie, they're big questions.
Nothing small fry about these questions.
Nothing small fry about this. You can reduce it to a single topic, But the idea is to be expansive. So let's think about this in terms of our life. So the very first question is, what do you love? And, you know, it's a really interesting question because it's not actually often that we sit down and give ourselves time to answer that question. You know, we already talked about we can be very, very locked into a specific situation for all the right reasons, survival reasons, right? And so to ask yourself, well, what do I love? It seems almost, I don't know, what would you say, petty or indulgent, superficial?
You know, this is quite likely just my core belief things, but absolutely there are some wonderful concepts and strategies to move towards things like self-care and recognition of, you know, the self-actualization, talking earlier about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But for some generations, for some people, there are those core beliefs of why are you being so indulgent?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I think we also go through various phases of our life where we consider that it's more indulgent than ever. I mean, I'm moving into a phase in my life in my 50s now where I actually feel like if I don't start actively participating in these questions now, then when am I ever going to do it? And, you know, this is coming out of, you know, mothering of my children and building my business. And I feel almost as though I've got a little bit more time now. And previously, I also labelled this as self-indulgent. You know, I got kids to get to school. I got people to feed. I got all that stuff that we juggle in our lives. But now I'm really appreciating that if I want my life to be a long, healthy one, then I really do need to start nailing these things down and incorporating them in my day-to-day. So that very first question, what do you love? Spend some time, you know, for people who decide to do this or explore Ikigai, you know, give yourself an opportunity to percolate on these questions, because first answer is not always the answer. Often first answer is what are we expected to say?
Yes, that's true.
What are we conditioned to say?
Yeah.
What the truth is may be a variation on that, or it may be completely different to that. And just also know that you're the only person that you're talking to about this at this point in time. So get in there, you know, dig up some stuff, have a think about it. One of the ways that I encourage people how to actually get into this question, because it can feel like, well, where on earth do I start, is think about, what did you love doing as a child? You know, was your favorite activity, was it playing with the Legos? Was it painting? Was it being outside? Was it cooking? Was it reading? And think about some of those things, because they are often the clues that we need as to what sustains us, what makes us happy, what actually allows us to refill our batteries and, you know, get some fuel on board to keep living life, to keep vibrant.
Yeah. I agree. Some of these questions, you know, what do you love? What are you passionate about? What's your vision? All these sort of things. Sometimes the initial headspace that we have is a block, one big block. We're not used to thinking that way. We haven't articulated in the past. We haven't been on a self-awareness journey to the point where we understand all those things. And so we come across the block, we go, oh, that's not for me. But if you're a human being, there are things that you hate, and there's things or shouldn't say hate, there are things that you dislike, and then there are things that you like, and there are things that you love. And so what you said before, let it percolate. Don't expect the answers to come up straight away. I think it's a wonderful piece of advice, because I know with myself personally that giving myself purposeful time for contemplation over anything in the world is an absolute gift, because that's where all the answers are.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, what we're creating when we answer these questions honestly, and yes, it can take a little bit of time because of all of those societal kind of expectations that we take on, and we continue to believe our first answer, which may not necessarily be the truth necessarily. and I use that word carefully, but, is that I don't know where I was going with that, but essentially I think that we can also get really distracted and uncomfortable with this question, Julie, because if we were to answer this really deeply, honestly, sometimes there would be things going on in our life that we would actively have to say, this is not part of what I love. This doesn't actually help me to continue to grow as a person. It doesn't help me contribute more to my community or myself. It doesn't help me to actually be on purpose in my life. It doesn't fit within what is a true framework for me. And I think that can be, very disconcerting at times. So anyone who chooses to do this, be gentle on yourself. We're not asking you to transform your life in 2 minutes. This is about conscious awareness and engagement, decision-making and action. But you get to choose how and when and with whom you actually put these things into practice. So please don't ignore the question because it feels uncomfortable.
Love it.
All right. So the second question is, what are you good at? There's this sort of idea around, I'd love to get your take on this actually, Julie. There's this idea that, if you do what you love, then you're going to get good at it.
Yeah. And
a lot of people, that is the way that we operate. And for in many instances, it's absolutely true. But I can kind of guarantee that even though I might love drawing, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm good at it for anyone else other than me, in terms of what it actually gives me in my life and does for me personally. So when you say to yourself, well, what am I good at? Well, I'm pretty ordinary at that, or pretty ordinary at that. But if those things do actually help you to have meaning in your life or create a beautiful physical or mental health space for you, then keep them on the list. They're very vital and they're very important. And then the other, what am I good at, is the things that you can naturally take out into your community that feel great to you. And the next question, which we'll get to in a moment, are of value or have perception of value to other people as well.
Yeah.
So
it's such a great question. What are you good at? And I think I always, have that thought that you can enjoy any moment if you choose to. All you have to do is start attaching different meanings to that moment, and you will be able to shift your experience of that moment. So I do have a core belief that I could be doing what I do, which right now is filled with all the things I love doing.
How awesome.
It is awesome. But I also believe that I have it within me, I'd like to think, but I have this firm belief, telling myself over and over again, I could be standing with a stop sign in traffic all day, every day, and still derive a lot of enjoyment from that, as long as I attach the right meaning to those situations. But I think what are you good at, identifying where your strengths lay, because you've got some tasks that you do every day or throughout your working life, throughout your working career, that come through with no resistance, that when you're working on those particular tasks, time seems to fly. You find it easy and you don't realise how easy you find it until somebody else tries to do it and they go, oh, why can't I do it like you can do it? I wish I was as good as you doing that thing. There is such a joy in having your working life or your home life or any aspect of your life filled with doing the things that you love doing. That question to me is so important, because if you can be doing the things that you love doing, it's a more energetic, passionate space to be in.
Oh, absolutely. And look, even if you can increase by 2%, 5%, 10%, the time that you're spending doing the things that you love and the things that you're good at that feel and resonate as though they come from you naturally and authentically, then how much happier would we be? because, again, we would be living our life on purpose, and there would be meaning to what we engage in and what we do. And the space that you're talking about, Julie, has been labelled as flow, where time disappears and there's just a joy associated with what it is that you're doing. And again, there's that question of, if we were all in flow, doing what we are all naturally good at, that also adds meaning and purpose to our life. Again, what couldn't we accomplish as an individual, as a family, as a community, as a country, as a globe? Because we all have different strengths, we all have different things that we're good at, and we all have different things that we love. And I believe, because I do believe in balance and universal balance, that there would be enough people doing the things that I don't like doing, but they love it, for us to actually be able to make this place a completely different and transformed experience for all humans on the planet. If we were genuinely committed to putting into action these 4 simple, not so simple questions.
That's it.
Yeah. So the next question, number 3, is, what can you be paid for? So you know what you love, you know what you're good at, and of those things, what can you be paid for? And that's often a really tricky question as well, and takes some exploration. I think that, if I'm thinking about my own career, I've had, various kind of, tools and techniques and offerings that I have to the marketplace out there and my clients. And if what I love and what I'm good at figure in those, then you would hope that there is a natural link to you being paid for those things. And I think that for each individual person, the value of what they're paid needs to be a very personal experience as well, because it's about what you choose, the value you choose to give those gifts and those things that you're offering out there to your community or whoever it might be, that you need to decide what satisfies you. You and I might have a very different experience of what we're prepared to be paid to be out there in the world and offering our gifts. And for you to understand what that is for you is a very unique experience as well. For some people, it's not much. For other people, it's a lot. It doesn't matter what that value is, as long as it's congruent with you and it achieves for you what it is that you want it to achieve. So again, in the same way that what are you good at and what do you love, we can often first answer may not be the truth of who we are as a person. What can you be paid for may not necessarily be the first answer that you're looking for either. So take the time, again, to explore this. And also, I think across our lifetime, Julie, it changes, right?
For sure. Oh, that's exactly what I was just thinking. When I started, after I sold my dental practice and I started becoming a consultant, so this was back in 2013, what my aspirations for my new career path as a dental consultant were back in 2013 to what I'm doing right now, worlds apart.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to recognise that what you are aware about today, that's just the starting point. That
absolutely
won't be where you end up.
It is not a set and forget. These 4 questions are not set and forget for the rest of your life. These 4 questions are really to kind of, in a way, what I would say is anytime you're going through a transition, pull out these questions, do a reassessment, set up a new framework for yourself that inspires you and allows you to feel passionately about your life, or gives you a laneway for expression of who you are and how you want to be in your life.
Yeah, because somebody could be in a role right now in a particular organisation. Part of their responsibilities is, for example, I don't know, being on the phone with everybody, every person that calls through, speaking to our dental community, the receptionists out there. They are the ones receiving all the telephone calls from people, and they may be scrutinised in that role. the environment that has been set up for them in that role could be quite negative. And so they think, I hate answering the phone. I absolutely hate it. It's not what I'm good at. I don't enjoy doing it. I don't love it. Yet put them in a different environment where they're encouraged, provided training, positive feedback, and cheerleaded all the way through. They're like, I freaking love it because I feel myself improving all the time. I love this role. I love this part of my role.
Yeah. And it really starts, the questions don't stop with these 4 questions. The questions extend into, well, now that I've discovered this, what else is possible? Now that I've discovered this, how can I take this information to my employer or, utilize it within my life to actually, redirect what I'm spending my time on every day, to redesign the products that I'm offering out there in the space that I work in, to, change my job or to change the percentages of tasks that I do within my job so that I'm working within my strengths and what I'm passionate about. I do know as an employer that when I have a new task for the people that work with me, I really think about, well, what do they love doing? So that I actually give that task to a person who's going to look at that task and go, oh, great. Okay, I'm going to add that to my calendar. And for them, it's not, oh, another task. For them, it's like, oh, this is within my zone of genius. So I'm going to blitz this in 5 seconds. And I'll tell you what, the efficiency you create for your teams when you work to their strengths and when you understand what their superpowers or their zone of genius or their natural affinity for tasks, jobs, roles, etc. is, the efficiencies that you create is out of this world. And
absolutely. And when you were saying something just earlier, it made me think, what would it take in order to love the thing that maybe you're not loving, which is part of your role right now? And if I ask myself, what would it take for me to love marketing, something that I'm not very good at? What would it take for me to love copywriting? These are elements to, when we talk about, can you be paid for what you do, for the things that you love doing? It's one element of it, isn't it? Because then you've got to promote yourself too. And I love doing the stuff that I'm great at and that my journey has, had that evolution of knowledge and wisdom around, and the way that I present that information and deliver that information. The stuff that I am not as good at, such as all the promotions and the marketing and, hey, look at me, this sort of space to be in, and the copywriting, it takes me half an hour to write something that a great copywriter would take 2 minutes to do.
Yeah.
What would it take for me to love that? It would take me to get better at it. We love doing the stuff that we're good at and that we feel really competent and that we've mastered it. And so if we are part of an organisation and we've got that strong resistance around part of the job, we've got, I hate doing that thing, maybe the answer is we'll do more training in it, because when you learn how to do it really well, all of a sudden you don't resist it so much and you do start to love it.
Absolutely. And, we are the worst critics of ourselves. And so when we feel we're not competent at something, we're going to make that choice to shy away from that aspect of that task. And it's not always possible because we've been employed to do a role and, that role is defined and it includes these certain things. But again, as an employer, I think that awareness around, where your employees are at in, how is it that those tasks they don't necessarily enjoy can be made easier, less, if that's possible, or how can you work around it so that you do support them to be able to get that aspect of their work done or their role done, and they still feel like, actually, I've got this. It's not this, huge, scary thing. I have the training now on board. I have the support around me on board, and it becomes an easier part of what it is that they do in their day-to-day.
And that comes back to what you were talking about with flow. Can you imagine the world where we're all in flow? And when you were mentioning that, I did think about it, a team of people in a corporate environment or a dental practice environment. What would that look like when you are yourself in flow and you are recognising that everyone else around you is in flow? And the stuff that came up for me then was there'd be no resistance and there'd be no judgment. So no resistance in terms of all these people have to do what I tell them to do. I need to get control over all of their behaviours and how they do things, but also no judgment of whether that person's working on the right thing to the right performance level to the right space, that you've got rid of all that judgment around it as well. And so that certainly does tap back into flow again when you're working with people's strengths and where their natural energies are moving them towards.
And it really does always come back to energy, and the energy that we bring and the energy that we have to expend and the transformation of that energy. And, I think one of the things that we've focused on in our practice, which is one of the reasons that, we feel that we're really successful and we've had people working for us for years and years and years, is that we actually have an expectation that they let us know what it is they love doing. So we work with a lot of hands-on healthcare practitioners, so myotherapy, massage, chiropractic, et cetera, and we actually ask those practitioners, what lights you up? What kind of clients do you want to see? Do you want to work on shoulders this month or backs this month? Or do you want to, we ask them to try to define it for themselves. And the reason for that is that when they do get those clients, it's because reception is aware that they love working with those clients. It's because there is this kind of filtering process. Oh, you may not want to see this practitioner, but we know this practitioner loves working on knees, for example. So, we all have a responsibility, I guess, to actually put it out there to the world. Hey, I can do A, B, and C, but gee, I love doing, E, F, and G. And that way, other people around us are also aware, and we've put our hand up to take on those things that actually light us up. It's always about energy and exchanging that energy, and that includes our clear communication. But it starts with having that understanding ourselves of what it is that we love and that lights us up.
And I imagine your daily work life, when it's filled with doing the things that you love, no longer are you getting to the end of the day just trying to battle through all these things and becoming so exhausted that you can't wait to, have the glass of wine and sit down and watch telly the whole evening. You don't have that sense of tiredness. I have to recover from my day now. Your day instead has helped to fill you up.
Yeah. I heard a great a definition, kind of, is it a definition? I'm not sure. You can decide that, but I was talking the other day about the difference between stress and burnout. And, this is why I love working with other coaches and healthcare professionals, and because you learn stuff all the time. And the definition that I saw, and I can't remember whether it was spoken or whether it was something that I read, but the definition or the difference between stress and burnout is that if you are going on your holidays just to recover from your work life, then you are already in burnout. If you're going on your holidays and you are full of vim and vigor, and you can switch off that working brain and click into family time or travel time or whatever it happens to be, and you're good to go, then yes, you may have had stress during that preceding experience, but you haven't entered the burnout zone. And I think, as you say, if we can get to the end of our day and go, gee, that was a great day, and be energized and have, and be able to go for our walk around the lake because we're motivated, be able to sit down with our kids and really engage with them, or our partner and really engage with them, be able to take the dogs for a walk. If we have energy at the end of our day, then I think that what that indicates is that we are managing these questions and their implementation really, really well. And I think it's an indication that we've maybe not consciously answered these questions, but we've managed to engineer them into our life anyway. And the benefits are we're on purpose, we feel great, we've got energy to spend and spare, not only for ourselves, but for other people. And what a great feeling that would be to have that every day.
Glorious.
Yes. Absolutely. So, final question. We've done what do you love? What are you good at? What can you be paid for? Oh, now the big question, what does the world need?
That is a big question.
Huge question. And how easy is it to become so overwhelmed by that question? Because, there's so many things that the world needs right now. So, I would like for anybody who decides to take this on, those first three questions were really about you as an individual. Don't lose sight of that as you move into this question, because actually what the world needs now is conscious, healthy people. who are making really good decisions for their communities, for their countries, etc., etc. And you being aware and having that framework of what you love, what you're good at, and what you can be paid for, and utilising that energy to actually serve your community and the world is so much more powerful than thinking about the war in the Ukraine or, all of those really big things. Because what happens when we go to those really big things is we become so overwhelmed, we actually don't take action. But when we look at the war in the Ukraine and go, how can I be a more peaceful, loving person in my life? We actually have control. That's where the power is, Julie. It's always in coming back to what are the steps that I can take to create change. And then how can I be a more peaceful, loving person within my community? How can I foster support and send peace and love to the Ukraine? How can I make sure that refugees, if I have a connection in Poland, for example, where so many refugees are going at the moment, how can I support people over there with peace and love? That way we're giving the world what it needs with the gifts that we naturally have, and we feel as though we are still in control and contributing.
Wonderful, wonderful. And it was Buckminster Fuller. He was an inventor, philosopher, all sorts of magical things. And he had actually earned 43 honorary doctorates, so a brilliant, brilliant man. And he said, you do what you see as important in the world. And it comes back to these questions, these Ikigai questions. You do what you see as important in this world. And if we all do that, we will be in flow and all the world's needs will be looked after.
Yeah. It's simple, but it's not easy.
Yeah. And I think if we don't have the answer around that, it might be a nice calling card to expand what we're feeding ourselves, we were talking about before, that if we have not got the awareness right now to understand what the answers to these questions are, maybe start to focus on what you're feeding yourself, documentaries that you may be watching. There are so many things online on YouTube and all the rest of it that, it's a huge online university to wherever your brain is taking you at the moment, wherever your heart's taking you at the moment. Read more books, speak to more people, and start to expand out your awareness. And so then answering these full questions may become a little easier.
Yeah. And, Julie, human beings are absolutely ingenious, and quite often we can find answers by looking at what other people are doing in our community. Just as a really simple example, there is a rental business. I don't want to use names or labels, but what they asked their community to do, or what people within that particular community chose to do, was to actually hire out these spaces where people can go and stay in the Ukraine, so that money was going directly to the owners of those properties, and so that it wasn't having to be filtered through government, it wasn't having to be filtered through humanitarian organisations. It was going directly to the people. So human beings are ingenious if we give ourselves the mental space and we give ourselves the right fuel and we give ourselves the right the capacity to actually ask the questions. Well, what could I do? What more could I do? How can I contribute, coming from what I love and who I am and what gives me purpose and meaning in my life?
Because quite often it's just stuff that we haven't formulated in our brains yet.
We haven't asked the questions.
We search our minds as if it's residing there somewhere. No, it's in imagination at the moment.
Absolutely.
It's potential thought at the moment. So put yourself in the space where you can have those thoughts.
Yeah, and it comes back to what you said right back at the beginning of the conversation. Until we have perhaps gone to places and seen the differences in the way that life is being lived there, how can we possibly imagine that? How can we possibly understand the experience of that? I have a beautiful story of one of my children. We went to Fiji, and we went to one of the we have sort of extended sort of family living in one of the villages there. And, we walked away, and my son said to me, he must have been about 8 or 9. He said, "Mum, you know what? They don't have a lot, but they're happy." they're really happy. And I just thought, my job as a parent here is done.
He's had the realization.
Perspective. We need to get out of our own lives and start looking for ways to generate that perspective. Look at the ingenuity of human beings. How is it that we can create something different? How is it that we can expand what we understand of the world? And the sense of purpose and meaning that gives you is mind-blowing, Julie. And the sense of mission and accomplishment is also so fulfilling. And
I think you've tapped onto with the accomplishment as well, because so much of what we do is avoiding the really hard journey.
Yeah.
Yet it's the really hard journey once completed to success. That's where we feel a sense of accomplishment. We don't feel a sense of accomplishment if it's been easy.
Absolutely. And, the greatest way to generate that in a really short period of time and to change your perspective, to change the way you look at your own life, to get a refresh, is to go and do some volunteering.
Oh, yes.
Fastest way ever to change your perspective.
That's a very good insight. And I think that's a wonderful project. If you are having trouble with these questions, that's a wonderful project to start you off on the journey.
Yeah, for sure. So big questions. What do you love? What are you good at? What can you be paid for? What does the world need? Ruminate. In this instance, I'm saying to people, ruminate on these questions, percolate a little bit, spend some time. It doesn't have to be answered right now, and it certainly is not always the first answer. And what happens then is, for those people who set up goals for themselves, or, they do the 12-monthly plan, if you have this framework and you can continually go back to this framework as your foundational reference for what you're going to do out there in the world, then you're always going to be congruent and in integrity within yourself. And that's, why these questions are so powerful, because they enable us. It's like a home base. We can come back to it and go, okay, well, I've got this decision and this decision to make, or this choice and this choice. Which one of those actually resonates with where I am now in terms of my Ikigai questions? And you're forging forward every time you use that as a reference.
Yeah, and the answers become far easier. They become obvious.
They become obvious. They really, really do. So, for all the listeners out there, I really encourage you to give yourself some space and time to answer these questions and look at them for yourself personally and see what it creates.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to put the links in the show notes around the book by Dan Buettner, Blue Zones, and also I'll find something on Ikigai that I'll pop in there as well, so people can jump straight on there and start asking themselves these 4 fantastic questions. Linda, you're so glorious. I have had so many wonderful experiences with you over the years, and I thank Fiona Redding for introducing us from the very start.
Yes.
You've guided me through all sorts of spaces in my life, and so thank you so very much for your contribution in my life and the connectedness that you offer to me, and I hope to mimic that with other connections that I make in my life as well. Hopefully you'll come back on the program very soon as well.
Very happy to. I always love chatting with you, Julie. So big hugs, and hope we can catch up in person very soon.
Won't that be lovely? That'd be lovely.
Awesome. Take care. Bye.
If you would like to find out more about Dr. Linda Wilson, just go to her website, drlindawilson.com. That's drlindawilson.com. You can also access her magnificent book, Stress Made Easy, as well via that website. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, you should join the club. The club members receive an online lunch and learn twice a month where I share insights, systems and strategies to improve the success of your practice. These lunch and learns could not be easier to train your dental team. They are recordings, so you can watch them at a time that suits you. For example, during team lunchtimes, pay your team members for their lunch hour. The first half hour, they're eating and watching the presentation. The second half hour, they're discussing how to implement this particular insight into your dental practice operations. And remember my favourite quote, it's by Archilochus, and he states, "We do not rise to the level of our expectations, but fall to the level of our training." So join the club now and start upskilling your team members and improving the operations of your dental practice. I hope to see you there.